Hello, Story Seekers. I'm Ben.
I'm Nico, and you're listening to The Tiny Bookcase.
Episode 100, a veritable milestone.
And Halloween to boot.
How will we get it all into one?
5 stories split over 2 prompts?
Crikey. Well, let's get on with it then. We'll start with our first prompt, which is 100. Nico, let's celebrate our century.
Righto. 1, 2... I was never very good at hide and seek as a child. I remember so fondly the long afternoons where my brother and I would take turns playing hider and seeker. The memories all seemed to contain the patter of rain. It was so loud in my preferred starter hiding spot of behind the long curtains in the living room. The tall glass doors that led into the garden held a lovely view, but the laws of hide and seek dictated that, of course, I would keep my back to that beauty. Instead, I would breathe in great lungfuls of curtain dust and giggle to myself at my brilliance. Sweet Cecil never found me quickly because my hiding spot was so clever, even though I went there every time. Of course, now, as an adult, I realise the true nature of the game my big brother was playing with me. He would stand in the centre of the room and say things like, "Goodness me, where could Jade be?" I would giggle behind a conspicuously little girl-shaped bulge in the curtains, with my feet sticking out at the bottom, and consider myself the greatest hider there ever was. He would ceremoniously hem and haw as he moved around the room, then say something like, "I suppose she just must not be in here then." I'd leap from behind the curtain and shout, "Boo!" to which he would always, of course, react as though I had terrified him to the end of his wits. We'd have a cuddle, I'd say I'm sorry for scaring you, and he'd tell me it was my turn to count. 23, 24... I haven't had any reason to find myself a good hiding spot in the intervening years. Spaces in those buildings I've called home were seen as somewhere to put an endless sea of discarded carrier bags, somewhere for the Hoover to live, somewhere to wedge the Christmas baubles until next year when they were needed again. So it was a mad scramble to find somewhere large enough to hold an adult and be truly convincing. Even the little girl I'd once been couldn't deny a pair of size 7 sticking out from the bottom of a fabric concealment. Logically, I couldn't pull things out of a hiding place. There'd be no better giveaway than a pile of boxes the same volume as me sitting next to a closed door. With more time, I could do it to all the spaces and make that a little more convincing. The counting was so irregular anyway. The child's voice drifting through the hallways was not following a metronome, not even a clock. 100 seems so very much when you're a child counting, waiting to hunt down your friends or siblings. I recall this childhood rhyme: 1, 2, miss a few, 99, 100. It always elicited a laugh, and calls for another round of counting, whereupon the culprit would cover their eyes dramatically and begin the long count, and the rest of the children would scatter to the wind. 49, 50... The sort of hide and seek, the one-on-one variant, is far more intimate. I'd played as an adult, but only with children to compete against, counting to 100 slowly as I could so I'd have a bit longer to sip my coffee, playing out the full charade of ignoring giggles, bumps in bedsheets, and those classic sticking out toes. There's a ritual to it. Like Cecil always did, I call out, "Where could they be?" Even though they can't see you, you put your hands on your hips and you rub your chin studiously, just in case they peek out from their hiding spot, which they invariably will. You have to ignore it, and the resultant glee that emanates from them when they feel they truly have you foxed. I won't be making those sort of mistakes today. Well, it's my turn to hide. 65, 66. Go and hide, Mummy, she said. I never could say no to that little face. I buried the instinct to say something like, perhaps a bit later on, dear. Mummy's just in the middle of something. And instead put down my laptop and got up. Hands went over eyes, and her sweet little voice began to count. 78, 79. And it was with some desperation that I find myself trying to wedge my body in behind the boiler. Its foam front gave way fairly easily, but here things are very tight. I place my hand on it to pull myself further in, and my palm hisses gently as it takes the heat of pipes filled with water on the brink of the boil. I somehow have the wherewithal to hold in my cry of alarm. It would be a terrible thing to give away my hiding spot now. I should have gone outside. I should have just run outside. No. The childhood instincts of hide and seek kept me right here, in the house, looking for cracks and crevices. When you're my age, there are less places that will take the whole of you. Low cupboards, they're gone. And the clutter of my life fills every empty space that I thought I could spare. The gap beneath my bed is crammed with memories I fear will wither to nothing unless I keep them. The cupboard beneath the stairs is rammed with brooms, dusty old coats, bits and pieces from a life well lived. 83, 84. I might have found space in Maggie's room. But if I interrupt anything in there, it won't be perfect anymore. A whole room held in time. Am I mad? Perhaps I must be, given the circumstances I find myself in. There's nowhere to lean, to rest. Each time I try, I meet hot metal and am rewarded with pain. 92, 93. I can't think. Not really. I'm so confused, so scared. I haven't felt very much for such a long time. The emotions now seem a burden unbearable. I don't want them. I don't want this. I've thought about that little face every day since they were taken from me. When an Arctic lorry found a little Corsa with a loving, caring man and a booster seat in it. And it rudely interrupted the Disney songs they were singing. And it left me all on my own. All alone for 10 years trying to figure out a way to live again. I was so happy to see her face again, outside of a photograph. Except it can't be her face. Because she's gone. For the first time in a decade, I accept that with some semblance of clarity. And that lets the terror in. 99, 100. Come in, whether you're ready or not.
Spooky. At the end. Real spooky at the
Creepy.
end. No, I loved it. I thought the early sensory stuff about, hiding as a child when it's raining outside, and that gave you such a wonderful sense of place. We talk about C.S. Lewis quite a lot, don't we? But it did remind me of them rattling around in the old mansion trying to find something to do on a rainy day.
Yeah, to be fair, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but obviously it goes a different route. So to jump from when she was a girl to when she is, very much an adult with all of the problems that she's accrued through her life, like the misfortunes and this kind of thing. It's a very stark jump, and it almost lost me a little bit, actually. Right in the middle, I was like, wait, have we switched perspectives to Cyril, the brother, or where? But then it does become very clear very soon. It was just couple of lines in the middle which is the tipping point between the two versions of her, isn't it? But I think it's okay for it to be a little bit unnerving or unsettling, that section, because the point is that you've jumped into her broken mental state where she's about to wedge herself behind a boiler 10 years after she lost her family, thinking that she's playing hide and seek with her dead daughter. It's fucking brutal.
Yeah.
There was also little shades of like, obviously neither of us have kids, but like we talked to a lot of people that were parenting during the pandemic and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And just like that moment where you're just like, no, I need to parent, right? I need to put my laptop down just because I can work from home. Doesn't mean that I should.
It should be my whole life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I liked that a lot. I felt like it had a lot of leg to it. Like it was strong, very emotionally like resonant, and it's got weird connections to my story that I'm going to read in a minute as well. We haven't had one of these in a while, but I think you'll sort of see where I'm.
Line one of your story. They found her behind the boiler.
Behind the boiler, yeah. It starts with finding a woman behind a boiler in a house that you just bought. No, so where did that come from for you then? What was?
So we've talked before about like I'll generally say the prompt out loud to myself a few times, and it hit that. I naturally said 99, 100. I thought, oh, okay, there's something there, and the story kind of started as, oh, maybe it's a creature pretending to be her daughter, but it moved away from that as it became more interesting for it to be like about emotional trauma than about a thing that goes bump in the night. Because there is no space for a monster under her bed because she's filled it with
memories,
with stuff.
Yeah, that you can't lose. Because it's like it's literal emotional baggage, isn't it? Very good, very good. No, I liked it a lot. We've also, just on the counting thing, we've done that sort of like storytelling device before, haven't we? I think you used it to count down rounds.
Yes,
from someone who was reloading.
Ammunition,
yeah, that's it. And I think potentially it's happened in a couple of other places as well. It's such a good framing technique for a story, isn't it?
Especially in the short story.
Oh yeah. Anything that you can get that can give you some alacrity of storytelling, like such a tight, because when you're reading that, you know that it's going to end on 100, from very early on, and that isn't often there's like a rug pull or something at the end, and the audience knows where you're going, so it's trying to figure out where the rug pull's going to go, and then it's such a strong rug pull that that's very rife with emotion. That it works very well. Like it's very difficult to point at any section and be like, oh, that didn't work, because the whole thing flowed from start to finish.
I think it's a really interesting device, counting down or counting up, just because you say, oh, they kind of know it leads them where they're going, but it adds tension. Yeah, it's such a good way if they know what the cap is, or if you're counting down, when the numbers start getting smaller and you can increase the frequency. So instead of jumping in tens, you start jumping in single digits, and it means you can actually really amp up a short story. And make it feel like there's lots happening very, very fast. Yeah. Which is, it's fun. I like using it. I have no doubt it will come back.
Yeah, no,
in the next 100.
I think it's good in the next 100. Yeah, 200. That would be something, wouldn't it?
Just I am still behind the boiler. This childish shit at finding people.
101.
Come on, kid. Why didn't I teach you maths?
Oh, right, okay. Well, I guess I should put my entry in for this 100th episode.
Tell me a story, Papa.
100. Her toes slid up inside my tailored trouser cuff until they found skin. There was something simian in her advance that I found thrilling. It implied base urges. I knew the room I'd reserved for us would have champagne waiting and the phone disconnected. My wife had a habit of calling around the 5-star spots after her 3rd glass of wine, and I always refused to use a false name. This woman didn't require rose petals on the bed from me, just money and cock. Things are simpler the more money you have. Life becomes streamlined around you and what you want. I had been soaring in that pocket of fast-paced good living for 20 years. I loved being the best, and footsie was always both my yardstick and my reward. The woman I bought for myself every month, after the exchange listed one of my companies, always had to be good with their feet. Money converted by my whims into physical sensations. I had learnt to savour it, to ensure we took in a show, a light but obscenely expensive meal, and drinks in a flashy bar. All the while, my money stroked me, sending tingles up my leg and into the sensation highway of my spine. The drinks that evening were at some post-bougie joint on the 5th, with a high irony quota applied to the decor. Karl Marx, picked out in sparkling sequins, seemed to be scowling directly at me from the opposite wall. It occurred to me that the person responsible for hanging that art must have had a similar thought process to that of a hunter mounting a fresh rack on the wall of their cabin. I felt the hotel room beckoning as her toes clutched at my shin. "Bill here," I spoke in the barman's direction, and raised a hand before bringing my wallet out. Casually, I tossed the slim card sheath onto the bar and gave the woman a calm smile. "Let me just generate your QR code, and here you go, sir." An androgynous 20-something with a short shock of blue hair slid a terminal over the bar towards me, nudging aside my wallet. "What's that?" I asked, feeling cold fury build in my spleen. "We only accept ethical crypto, sir." "You think you're fucking funny?" A couple of nearby patrons gasped when my tone changed. That cretin, in trying to embarrass me, had triggered a snarling spike of anger. "Bring a card reader," I said, letting the ice into my voice. We don't have any, sir. We only accept crypto." "Cash, then. Here." I pulled my money clip out and thumbed a big note from the billfold. "Tell it to Benjamin." "Sir, I can't accept that. We have no change." "Keep it. That's a green bill there, you ingrate. Money we scorched the world to earn. So you'll damn well take it." I remember standing and reassuring my woman with a nod. She slipped back into her heels and stood next to me, her face holding a carefully blank smile. As I pulled a long coat over my suit jacket, I took a few steps, leaving the irate little twerp behind me. The world tipped and yawed, and Marx looked like he was shouting. I felt a small tingle of pain, and then my lights went out. I woke up in a plush room with a view of Manhattan etched against the purple night in city lights. The window stretched across one whole wall of the room, and it should have given me some hope that I still knew how the world worked. It didn't. Instead, I saw how old many of the buildings were compared to the stark new builds that had forced their way into the skyline. The monitors around me gently whirred and beeped. All is well, they seemed to say, but I didn't feel I could agree. I watched my heart rate for a while. The graphed line peaked and troughed repeatedly. I knew where I'd buy on that pattern, and where I'd sell, too. The attending doctor came in after a while and explained my mild cardiac event. I didn't say anything or ask any questions. I didn't know how. "Send the bill to my office," I said as she went to leave after the awkward silence. Her eyebrow raised, perhaps looking for an insult in my words. "Billing, we'll sort that out when we're through with the tests. For now, your insurance covers it all. No need to worry." "I'm not worried about that." "Thank you, doctor." I realised I didn't know how to talk to normal people anymore. My whole world had become money when I was a kid, and decades later I was finding I couldn't have any conversation without a transactional foundation. Cryptocurrency. What the fuck even is that? Digital numbers representing amounts of actual money in actual banks, sure. I had monitored the slightest changes in these for my entire career, but money beyond the boundaries of what money is seemed wrong to me. It felt like I'd come home to find a sinkhole had undermined my house, that I might stand at the lip of it and stare down into that unfathomable, abyssal darkness of the future. I'd used money to interact with people ever since my first big paycheck. I'd used it to fuck people, fight people, and even love people. I suddenly felt very aware that my worldview was something that I near consciously carried about with me wherever I went. Now it was shot right through and exposed as merely a point of view rather than a fact. The shallowness of my existence pulled at my thoughts, and I found I was crying but didn't have the words to express it, and no one to express it to. I clambered out of bed, yanking free of the machines. My fingertips explored the windows, trying to find a latch to open them. They were locked. The orderly rushed in at the panicked noises the machines were making and wrestled me from the window. They sedated me and put me through a couple of weeks of recovery. No one visited me. The hospital head shrinkers couldn't find a way to communicate what had happened to me properly, and eventually I discharged myself without knowing what I would do next. How am I supposed to live in a world where money isn't everything? Do you know?
That was horribly bleak, but I liked it.
Yes, it was pretty bleak, wasn't it?
There's some really interesting concepts going on in there. Although I struggled to grab onto anything else after the beginning when you described her sexual advances as simian, and my brain just clung onto that like a monkey to a branch. I realised,
I think I might have done that deliberately, actually, just for you. Just for you.
I'm not sure I like that. I also heard toes like gripping his shin. I was like, is this... I know this is clearly the future and things have changed, but like, does she have long finger toes? I was really concerned about this woman's feet. But
I got pretty hung up and obsessed by this idea of having the FTSE 100 counterpointed against footsie. It was like the first thing that came to me when we figured out the prompt 100.
Good grief. Really nice thing. I really enjoyed him looking out into the city and seeing the juxtaposition of old to new.
Yeah.
And kind of realising where he fit into that bit.
Or not.
Or didn't fit anymore, It's I like your ethical cryptocurrency,
yeah.
Is that a thing?
I've got no idea. I assume it will be, because obviously it's crypto mining is like, it does take up a huge amount of energy, so I would assume that at some point someone's going to gimmick that their coin is ethically somehow better.
Tree
coins, yeah.
Oh, I can't wait for tree coin. Organically grown cryptocurrencies. Free from GM.
No, but it's an odd thing, and it's also such a little thing to freak out about, like not being able to pay your bill in a bar because you don't have the right kind of money. It's a very simple stress and embarrassment.
Yeah.
And this guy, and his whole life is money. He's a stockbroker of some sort,
Yeah.
It occurred to me that someone having their worldview rattled to the point where they can't carry on because their worldview was so shallow and so one note. It's quite a scary moment. Like, it must happen to people quite a lot, I would have thought. Like, that little cold moment of realisation. And you've just got to hope that you have the emotional fortitude and the sort of the mental language to talk and figure your way out of such a pit. He's such a broken middle-aged stockbroker. He doesn't have any of those tools, so that's why they jump out of windows all the time. In this,
it's an interesting one. Like, you can see the divide in the different kinds of people. Because for some people, that's it's their moment of humbling, and it's when they find something deeper in themselves. Some people latch onto religion. Some people would go and start a commune in the mountains somewhere and
buy a fast car.
Yeah, or buy a fast car. But some people, it's just as soon as that veneer gets smashed off, they realise that they don't have anything else. No. They aren't anything other than what they'd chosen to represent themselves with. In this case, money.
Yeah, bank balance, basically.
As soon as it was like, but your money isn't up to date and cool enough now. So it was like, oh, I am not anything. Like the line about no one came to visit me.
Yeah, I added that in on a third draft.
Yeah.
I thought it was potentially a bit too blunt, but I think it's sort of necessary, isn't it?
It's how the man speaks, though.
Yeah.
He's convinced himself so strongly that his money is everything that he must have thought he'd even bought loyalty from these women he was paying to be company or
colleagues at work,
stockbroker friends.
We know he's an utter prick to his wife.
Yeah.
So obviously, and I think there's a impression that there's no kids in the relationship as well. Like, it's sort of it's horrid. Like, he's an absolute prick, isn't he? This guy. But do you see the link that I was talking about? Both of them are people that have their worldviews kind of shaken, and they sort of ask the audience, like, how am I supposed to go on? How am I supposed to
do now?
Yeah. So we both went sort of bleak in a quite a similar way, but for very different reasons.
Interesting that we'd reach 100 episodes and start saying, what's next? Where do we go from here? How has my worldview changed? It's almost like we're growing as people. I'll never be accused of maturing. Not now, not never, with my simian advances on you.
Alright, okay, so word choice change, maybe.
Never. Don't ever change that.
Just the whole thing, except he's just dating a chimpanzee.
What do you mean I can't date a chimp anymore? My worldview is shattered.
I'm going to jump out this hospital room window. They're testing me for monkey AIDS.
Ook, said the doctor.
Oh, what, he's an orange Utan?
Oh, yeah, he's an orange Utan. Let's go back.
Well, time for our second prompt of the episode. Got plenty of fucking stories for people today, haven't we?
Oh, yeah.
It's good stuff.
Loaded.
This prompt was picked by our guest, Mark Brandon.
Mark's original episode was unfortunately lost to a technical error. However, he's an excellent sport and came back on to read for us again in honour of Halloween.
But before we get to Mark's excellent story, we've got two more for you from us. Nico, take it away. Your prompt is Luscious.
Luscious. It was some point in the late 80s when I started going by Luscious. The date's all melty because of the Coke. Fuck, I loved Coke back then. It was so much purer than that shit you get now. It's like 60% Drano now. It'll rot your brain inside out. I was at a party with a guy who said he was going to be the next big thing in rap, which I didn't really care about because I was there for the drugs and to make a little money, you know? Maybe find myself a daddy for the night, see if I could roll out with some new shit. Anyway, that guy got shot in the face about a year later, which is fucking crazy. But what are you gonna do? That's the game he was playing. Fucking idiot. Great blow, though. The drug silly. I see that goofy look on your face. So anyways, I was dancing on a table at the party to that Denise Williams song. You know the one. Let's hear it for the boy. Well, I find that song so funny now. You know, she's talking about this dude like he's a good guy, but also talking about how he treats her like a piece of shit. And I didn't really listen to the words then. No one did. We all just thought it had a good sound to dance to. And it's pretty ironic, really, when you think about it. Because I was letting all kinds of dudes put their hands on me so I could get high and buy jewelry. So, I'm dancing, and this big guy, real wide and tall, he just comes over and shoves a 50 into my pants. Like his whole hand with it, too. He tells me, "Baby girl, you can make a lot of money dancing like that. You want to come work for me?" I didn't even care about the fact he was trying to fill me up, because all I heard was money. And I thought, yeah, fuck it, why not? You looking at me like that? You want to know if you fucked me right? Oh, yeah. He was packing something. I done told you he was a big boy. That dirty little smile on you, dirty boy. So, anyway, I start dancing a few nights a week, and they basically fed us Coke there to help us not be nervous. I loved it. So much money coming in, and the guys don't even get to touch you. It's basically the dream. I've been doing it a few months, and they asked me, do I want to start giving private dances? So I'm like, sure, more cash. These guys party too, so who cares if they grab my ass a little? I don't do nothing I don't want to. They feed me my body weight in Coke. Those were my fucking glory days. So I do that a while too, and then they ask me about if I want to make triple, maybe even more. All I gotta do is fuck some dudes now and then. Nobody gross or nothing. Just, I'm a cute girl. They had some clients they knew would like me, so I thought, let's do this right. I like fucking. I'm 17, making more money than my dad was back home. I am a goddamn rock star. The 90s was coming, and I was great at my fucking job. Making bank, never had to pay for no drugs, because they was just giving me them. Fuck, have you ever tried heroin? You should. You can fuck anyone on that shit. You wouldn't even care if it was your own brother. I was big into heroin in the 90s. Ended up spending a lot of my cash on it because I'm smart, see. I didn't want none of the cheap shit that they was giving the other girls, and I don't share needles with nobody. Anyway, some of my guys was getting nasty because I got them track marks going all crazy. They thought it was gross. I was like, fuck them. They don't know me. They don't get this pussy if they can't handle that. But I had to fuck some guys I wasn't a big fan of. Still on my terms, though. The doors don't just open for anybody. In 1995, this guy comes and he says that he wants me. And I was doped out because I'd finished already for the night. But they let him in anyway. I wake up and he's already just doing whatever the fuck it is he wanted to do. Couldn't barely feel nothing off his little limp dick, but I was mad, you know, it's my body. So I snapped or whatever. I took up the syringe I've been using and I just popped him in the eye with it. He made this fucking crazy noise, so I just pulled it out and stuck him a few more times. He got all sideways right, because there must have been some gear left on there, and he falls, and I don't know, I just kept going. I had to get the big glass ashtray from the side, too, because he wasn't going to get hurt no more after the needle snapped off. So I smashed his head right open. Took a whole bunch of hits, too. He was a tough guy. I had to scrub up all that shit what came out of him, or leave. So, I got my shit, and I just went. I can't even remember what city I was in then, but I hopped on a bus, and I went with like one set of clothes, and a little bag of the good shit, and my money. And I gotta tell you something. I have done every drug that you can think of, but on that bus, and every day since, there's only been one addiction I think about. Killing. I ain't never felt anything like it. I try not to overdo it, you know? So much of a good thing and all that. My ma used to say, everything in moderation, sweetie. And she was right. Mothers usually are. They know because they got to deal with all the bad shit. I've done about 23 now. I wait for bad guys, obviously, and I know which ones they are because of the way they treat the other girls. It's tougher now because I'm older. I don't know exactly how old. I ain't had a birthday in years. You're 21 till you say you ain't, so I'm 21. You like it anyway, don't you? I see that look on your face earlier. You looking to find out if it all still works down there, huh? I know what you're thinking. Why would I tell you all this? Well, I tell all of them. 'Cause it's good to share things. Get them off your chest. You know, share the burden with people. I can't tell God on account of I don't believe in him no more. Except on Christmas. He still gets his birthday. Anyway, that stuff will have fucked you up by now. You know what it's called? Tetrodotoxin. It's got to be the longest word I ever use. It comes out of a fish. You get that out of a fish. Those crazy fucking things are just full of poison. I don't eat them no more since I found out about this stuff. You won't be able to move or nothing, but you get to feel it all. So that's good, right? You wanted to feel it, didn't you, Daddy? I bet you did, you dirty motherfucker. Now hold still. Baby girl's gonna see what you look like on the inside.
What iconic character Luscious is there. I mean, there's no getting away from that. That's got to be one of the best characters you've ever created, I think, and brought to life with your voice as well.
She's fucking bonkers.
Absolutely. We're often not in the same place when we're recording these episodes, but that was a particularly uncomfortable one to sit across from you in the same room. Because
you like it when I tell you stories, Daddy? I bet you do.
Dirty little smile on your face. Oh, crazy! Yeah, no, it's it has like a like almost like a Goodfellas vibe to it, doesn't it? Like the way that, you know, ever since I was a little boy, all I wanted to be was a wretched drug addict or instead of a gangster, mass murdering wretch. Yeah, no, she is just she feels so real, doesn't she? Because just like the way that she, like, you know, like mothers are always right. You know, she's got little like inbuilt sayings, truisms, platitudes, and that kind of stuff that normally you would dismiss someone like that as not a threat, not not really like engaging with the world in like a creative and intelligent way.
Yeah.
But that underestimating her is the last thing 25 dudes have done.
Yeah.
And that makes it very scary. The turn of her being this psychopathic murderer is it's a real joy. It's like a really rich bit of storytelling, and it occurs at the right time. Like again, structurally, it's a very sound story. I like it a lot.
Especially talking about the Goodfellas thing. A lot of those little truisms are very Italian American, and there's a lot of that like mother knows best, and never too much of a good thing.
She's probably got like massive hair as well, right?
Oh, yeah.
She's got like a big Italian do.
Huge earrings.
Yeah.
Huge earrings. But like even the little things like, the wisdom, I don't share needles with anybody.
Yeah.
And to her that's I've been clever, I'm clean because I buy my own heroin and I use new syringes. And to live in that kind of delusional state to the point that she's like, I'm a hero, I'm getting rid of bad men. It's a really interesting character, not only to write but to inhabit when you're reading. It's just like Ben will be able to confirm for you, I couldn't stop moving my hands. Just
very expressive.
Gesturing and, really.
This is why my first comment was that she's an iconic character. I think if we were to look back over the last 100 episodes, we've had lots of good stories, some stories that didn't hit the mark, etc., etc. But like occasionally you get like a character that just comes to life, and this one is iconic. I think Luscious is. It's going to be difficult to walk away not holding this woman in my head in some way, some dark little moment inside my brain.
Of course not, you dirty little boy. It's different in my voice.
It's way different in your voice.
Is it better or worse? That's the real question.
Equally bad.
I bet you like that, don't you? Don't you dirty motherfucker? You love that. We've been friends for a long time and I've never done that to you, and I don't think I'm ever going to do it again.
I just got assaulted with words.
At least it's on mic.
Yeah.
Go on. I think you better tell a story so we move away from this.
Let's do it. Luscious. Dick sucking lips - luscious. Helen was past frowning at the phrasings they used. Bespoke hand-drawn porn was an area where confusing and demeaning descriptions were frequently thrown at her. She suspected that some of these guys were clearly getting off merely by making the request. She could see why. Exposing all the little details of the image you wanted to nut to was an innately intimate process. A completely one-sided process, though. If she had to put herself through college by drawing ridiculous anime titties and revenge porn from reference photos, then that's what she'd damn well do. Helen let the borrowed graphite bite the minute roughness of the thick paper. The smallest changes in pressure, angle, and speed cause lines to be at turns bold, sharp, or dissipating. Anatomical poses in perfect perspective flowed from her as she shaped the humble lines into facsimiles of flesh. The latest commission had come with a strange caveat, that the customer had to supply the single pencil which was to be used, and would be returned with the completed drawing. Helen had agreed and set up a P.O. box redirect to the campus mail office to avoid the obvious stalker possibility. She'd wiped it down before touching it, just in case it had been up or in someone beforehand. It was unbranded and appeared to be towards the harder end of pencil leads she would normally use for her art. The lines it marked were clean and precise, like those in her architectural minor classes. The customer was paying triple price for a single figure black and white sketch done in this way. So simple that it would be only a single day's work for Helen. The lips aside, the figure requested was far closer to realism than those she was usually paid to contort into life on the page. It was a stark contrast to the unbelievable measurements which normally caused her to scoff. Helen felt, as she drew, that this figure was obviously practically unattainable, but clearly possible inside the limits of human physiology. The afternoon light dimmed and died beyond her dorm window. Helen, totally absorbed, noticed it only as a trigger for her to turn on the high-luminosity lamp which she kept over her desk. It felt perfect when she had finished, in a way that she had never felt before about her art. It was in her style, of course, but something about it reminded her of ancient depictions of the female body, as though she had rendered an accurate depiction of a priestess of Eros, sacred and supple. Helen worried for a moment if the piece was too divine, and therefore not capable of awaking the base eroticism she had been employed to draw out. She shook her head, knowing it was finished either way, and returned to the campus mail office to send it off. Helen had already sealed it in a reinforced envelope with the pencil in it for company. It wouldn't do to package it up on the desk with the porter watching her. The address was local, so she felt like she could start counting her money. The autumnal wind tugged at her as she walked back through the faux village of the campus, and Helen smiled. The commission would cover her for the next 2 months. The caterwauling of her alarm dragged her out of bed the following morning, and Helen sleepily rolled from the warmth of her duvet into the painful cold of the small room. A moment of panic dissonance struck her as she caught sight of her reflection in the mirror which hung on her door. Helen's breath caught as she thought someone else was in the room with her. The woman in the mirror was not her, but she recognised the curves of her hips and the line of her jaw. Helen approached her reflection and examined herself. Her body had completely changed overnight into the flesh she had drawn the day before. It made her feel dizzy as her mind tried to encompass the plain truth her senses were telling her. It was real. The body that people nearly killed themselves trying to attain or pay surgeons to cookie-cutter them into was painlessly hers. There was a thrill to it, which was quickly squashed by the horror at having her say in the matter removed. Helen fumbled for her phone and found the commission app she used. The customer had a small green circle by his name to indicate he was online. "What the fuck?" she wrote, a sharp departure from her normally formal tone she used when dealing with clients. "It just arrived. I have to say, you aren't much to look at." Attached was a picture of the art she had sent the previous evening, except instead of the luscious lips and narrow waist he had requested, it was a detailed and exacting drawing of her own body. "What have you done?" she wrote, a scream hissing out from between her gritted teeth. "Given you a gift, you stupid slut." The reply came back like a whip, cracking over her forehead. The feeling of dread which had been building suddenly plunged her heart into the cold waters of fear at the violence in his words. "I'm sorry, but I don't want this," she pleaded. "You can do whatever you want with that new body. It won't age, it won't get fat, it won't die. Not as long as I keep this safe." He sent the message as a reply to the demure picture of her old naked body. "I don't want this," she repeated. He replied with a cell number. "Add this to your phone and text me." "I want you to destroy it," she texted him immediately. "If I do, you die. If you go to the cops, I will burn it. If you don't do as I say, I'll take an eraser to you. Look at your left foot." Helen looked down and saw the pinky toe was missing. She rubbed her thumb over it. The flesh had sealed perfectly, and she hadn't felt a thing. Her phone buzzed with another message from him. "I was never into feet that much anyway. Don't make me turn you into a limbless fuck toy." Hopeless and helpless, Helen cried. She snatched up the box cutter that she kept for sharpening her pencils and dragged the blade along her forearm. It sank into her skin and unzipped her arm, but the flesh resealed itself almost immediately after the passage of the blade. Only a small amount of blood stained the steel to show she had done anything at all. Frenziedly, she hacked at the arm, but despite her efforts, it remained a perfectly formed long limb. Her phone buzzed again. "Along the tracks. Nice try." Attached was a close-up of the drawing's arm, now savagely mutilated where the flesh had ribboned. He followed it up with an address. "Meet me here at noon. Wear whatever you want. We're going to see what those luscious lips can do." Helen felt as though something had broken in her. Broken so quickly, she thought it might never have been strong at all. She pulled some sweatpants on over her long legs and covered her supposedly perfect breasts with a college hoodie. Helen pulled the hood up to hide her raven-black, glossy hair and put dark sunglasses over her new almond-shaped eyes. On her way out of the door, she scooped up the box cutter and put it into her pocket. He was going to find out exactly what she could do.
I, for one, like the pornographic version of Dorian Gray. I mean, it's a great concept for a story, man. It's really, really simple, but when you're writing horror stories and body horror stories, it is those concepts that work the best. Because if you have to really think about what's happening, you don't get time to sit in the terror of it.
Yeah, true.
And that delicate setup of her disgust and acceptance of what she's doing to pay her way.
Yeah.
That then being that it's a rug pull in a way, because that's what the story's about, and then it just isn't. And it's about her having to tackle this change. And it's an interesting one because, you know, in a lot of stories it's like, you know, Spider-Man wakes up and suddenly he's got 6-pack abs and he's strong enough to lift a city bus.
Doesn't need glasses
over his
anymore.
head, doesn't need glasses, and he's like, this is the best thing ever.
Yeah.
But she doesn't.
Yeah.
Because it's not who she sees herself as. And then
No.
it becomes immediately apparent that this man is going to, you know, just abuse her forever.
Yeah.
And probably has a room full of drawings of people that he is manipulating and doing terrible things to. And
Doing terrible things with his magic pencil too.
yeah.
Yeah, the bit at the end, obviously, I think works potentially better on the page, but it's this idea that as she's sort of getting dressed, it's the descriptor list.
Yes, I got that.
You
from
got that
from your read. Yeah,
You got it. Yeah, okay. Because obviously he would have bullet pointed what he wanted this image to look like, and you know, she didn't choose to look like that.
Yeah,
and he's the taking away of all of her agency. Like, she can't even kill herself.
Yeah.
When it becomes like, it's a weird moment, that, because she reaches for the box cutter and it's sort of like, it's not, petulant's the wrong word, but it's very like reactive, isn't it? It's very much like, oh, I'm out. Like, I need to be able to control this in some way, so I'm going to take a blade to my arm.
I don't have many options, but I do have this one.
And then,
but then you don't.
Then you don't. It's unpleasant. I would say this has unpleasant tones in this story.
Yeah.
Like, I really found myself very uncomfortable talking in his voice over the text chain that they're having, the exchanges. That moment when he calls her a slut is like really horrid to read, because it's such a violent use of language.
Oh yeah. But that shows that it's well written, because if it's even making you, its author, uncomfortable, you can be sure that those words are horrid.
Yeah.
I'd be really interested to see this story from a switched perspective of a male artist being turned into
a gender swap sort of thing. But
yeah,
yeah.
You're nothing changing internally, but all of a sudden now you're a hot girl and you have to service this presumably extremely gross dude.
We can only assume. That reminds me quite a lot of, I think it's called The Skin I Live In, or it's something like that. Okay. It's an Antonio Banderas movie.
Yeah.
Where he's a world class like surgeon, and he ends up taking a knife to someone that he doesn't like very much to turn them into a sexual figure for him.
Oh.
It's very, very scary, like unpleasant movie. So potentially, maybe I was drawing a little bit towards that, but I didn't do the gender swap thing.
Yeah.
Largely because I think it is the story turns on female consent.
Yeah.
I think.
Oh, definitely.
In this regard. But yeah, there's so many like movies you mentioned, like Spider-Man and stuff like that. But you have like Freaky Friday and the ones that they like become like their younger self and they're back at school and
13 going on 30.
They can relive their glory days. But there is actually like, when she catches herself in the mirror, it's like, oh shit, someone else is in the room because it's not her.
Yeah.
Oh, horrid.
But people do accept it very quickly in those movies.
They do.
I know there's a short run time.
Yeah.
But if tomorrow I woke up and I rolled over and I was like, wait, I'm in Ben's bed, and you were like, oh my god, I'm Nika, I think first of all we'd phone each other.
Yeah.
Because in those movies they never communicate with each other. But I think I'd be like, hey man, I think I'm you. Are you me? If you're not, then this won't make much sense.
Oh. Yeah.
Oh, please take insulin at the following times in the following amounts.
Shit.
Yeah. I need a doctor.
Immediately. Oh, right. Okay. So we've had 4 stories already.
I reckon we can cram another one in.
It's definitely getting another one. So we're going to hand ourselves over to ourselves.
But I hate those guys.
And have a good chat with the excellent dude that is Mark Brandon.
Right. Take it away, us. Time for the spooky part. Our guest story writer for this, our 100th episode, is a science fiction and fantasy writer who has, in the past, turned his clever hands to journalism, DJing, and illustration.
His first book, The Colossus of the Thames and Other Tales, is a collection of 12 steampunk short stories, which was published last year. The 12 tales explore various aspects of life in an alternate Victorian world where time is a commodity and horrors lurk under the veneer of advanced technology. We would like to give a scarily warm welcome to Mark Brandon.
Hello, Mark!
Hey guys, do I need to put on a spooky vampire voice as it's the Halloween episode?
You guys can do it. Mine's probably going to eventually just turn bad somehow. Like I'm sure I would get cancelled for any kind of attempt at a voice in that regard.
Mine will just go Sesame Street, so I think we should probably move on.
Just have you counting. So yeah, there's actually two reasons it's a little bit scary. We have already spoken to Mark before, and our recording of it was lost to the eddies of time. We had a full episode for you. We had 3 stories, lots of chatter. We had a great time, and an interview as well, and it all disappeared. So we're going to have to doubly thank you, Mark, for coming back on and being an exceptional sport about it all.
That's quite all right.
It's good. It's suitably Halloweeny, isn't it? We're bringing it back from the dead and all that.
Back from the
Lost
dead, yeah.
episodes. It's floating out there somewhere in the electronic ether as we speak.
Are you a fan of Halloween generally? Some people.
Yes, I kind of am actually. I back in 2016, I got invited to a couple of Halloween parties, and I actually scratch built my own steampunk vampire hunter costume. Which I turned up to the first night's party in sort of as the hunter, and then the second party on the Saturday as the hunter, having been turned as a vampire. So I had vampire teeth and white contact lenses in. And I wandered into the second party, and there was a guy there who was in the costume department of the Royal Opera House, and he went, "Oh my God, that's amazing. Where do you work?" And I went, "What do you mean, where do I work? I've got my own business." And he went, "Oh, wow, I don't know, so do you making costumes?" And I went, "No, I'm a management consultant." And he went, "Oh my God, I thought you were a costume designer." Well, okay.
That is high praise. I think
you can see it on my Instagram actually, Mark R. Brandon Official. There's a picture of it on that. So I'm probably going to I'll probably repost it because I was planning to reboot the costume, but I'm not sure I'm going to have time this time. But I'll put a picture of it up on my Instagram.
We've got some experience making our own costumes as well, actually. Many years ago. I don't think a top level theatre director would have been able to possibly give us that compliment. However,
not even close.
It was pretty bad. Nico had a beer box on his head.
We created our own superhero team out of necessity, not necessity for superheroes. Necessity for justification for our shit outfits. But
what were your superhero names?
I was the party box.
Wow.
Nemesis of the Boredom Badger. He was. So
Nico spent the whole evening talking like in dudisms, and he was in like a dressing gown with a beer box on his head and Wayfarers on. It was pretty intense. Whereas I was the Interrobang, and I had a black shirt with an Interrobang symbol scrawled on it like the Riddler, but shit.
Yeah,
like an angry Riddler. Yeah,
like a very angry Riddler.
Big shout out to our boys, the Boot and Captain Independent Cornwall, if you're listening.
Now, the Boot, as you might be able to guess, was a dude wearing one Wellington boot that he had gaffer taped with silver gaffer tape. That was his whole costume. And the Captain Independent Kernow had a massive pasty for a shield.
Of course.
It was a time. So as you can tell, we did not go to any fine parties with that. We just got absolutely ratted.
If a costume designer did see us, they probably said something like, "Ugh." So we don't know. We didn't catch it. We're too busy being awesome.
Right, we're going to jump straight into Mark's story because he's going to close not only our 100th ever episode, but also this is actually our Halloween episode as well. The prompt that we've written to and Mark has written to is Luscious. Mark, take it away, my friend.
Oh, this is luscious. Peter was knackered. After scouring every fabric and accessory shop from Marylebone to Mile End, the ballroom was, finally, ready for the dancers to arrive. He felt a pang of anxiety. It looked like too much drapery, too many candles, too many chandeliers, but no, his instructions were quite clear. It had to be like this, down to the last detail, as daft as they all were. The words of his mentor, Random Betty, from wardrobe at the Royal Opera House, no relation, rang in his ears. Remember, darling, do whatever they want, no matter how mad it sounds. The only way to get on in show business. Peter scratched his cheek and felt one of the largest spots release its cargo under his nail. 10 months in a tiny apartment above Shoreditch's noisiest late-night chicken shop had done nothing for his complexion or sleep patterns. His sister said she could get him a job working in Superdrug, but he hadn't wanted to waste his training. Besides, he had been promised a life-changing payoff for this gig. He presumed he'd be able to clear his student debt at least. His boss didn't seem short of money. He flipped the house lights and went through yet another final inspection. Yes, the floor was polished to not yet a mirror. Yes, each candle was cut to the breadth of 2 male hands. Yes, every single one of the 14,000 Swarovski crystals he had painstakingly applied to the purple velvet drapes was sparkling as diamond. He ran his forefinger along every line of the 3 pagefuls of instructions just to make sure, but he knew them by heart. He closed the slim leather-bound volume and returned it to the lectern. The phone trilled, and Peter jumped out of his chicken-greased skin, reappearing in it an instant later. "Well?" rasped the voice on the other end. Never a hello, never a mention of Peter's name. Gabriel Calmet was nothing if not entirely self-absorbed. "I trust everything is ready and entirely to specification?" I think it is, yeah," said Peter. "You think?" echoed the voice at volume. "I don't pay you to think. It is vital, vital. Everything is precisely, exactly, strictly correct in every single detail," said Calmet for the millionth time. "It is to specification, yes, sir," said Peter, feeling his balls crawl. "I'm in heavy traffic in an undisclosable location." Calmet was paranoid too. "But I arrive presently. I trust the child is suitable." Peter had picked up the youth on Tinder, looking for first sexual experience, read the profile. In a city of lies, who knew if it was true? But the boy at least looked 18. The instructions specified virginal yet richly in prime. So if actual children were completely out of the question, that would be a red line for Peter. "Yeah, it is suitable." He looked to the middle of the ballroom. Curious 18 was tied to the chair inside the golden circle, drugged to the eyeballs, grinning like a lunatic pixie, dressed in the gown Peter had spent days and nights encrusting with fake gems. "Good," said Calmet in a tone designed to scorch paintwork. "Any single slip could spell disaster." The phone went dead. Peter's heart moved from foxtrot to can-can. He went to get changed into the midnight blue robes necessary for the ritual. Surely it was all bollocks, this. He felt bad for the kid, but maybe he'd get a life-changing payoff too. Outside, Peter heard the rumble of a powerful engine. He moved to his appointed position and pulled his cowl over his head. The engine gunned and roared away. The first dancer entered, depositing their personal keycard into the golden basket by the door. Peter indicated a silver X on the floor by the circle, and the cloaked, hooded figure took up position on it. Outside, a second engine growled, stopped for a moment, then roared off, dropping off another 2 dancers. And on and on. Engine, silence, engine. Dancers taking up position until all 50 stood neatly around the circle. Another, somehow deeper engine growled outside. The door opened a final time and Calmet swept in full regalia. Sceptre, ruff, floor-length mirrored robes. Atop his bald pate sat the crown of control, and across his piggy eyes, pinched onto his fat nose, was the mask of reflection. Peter rolled his eyes. Calmy looked ridiculous. Curious 18 giggled. Calmy glared at the youth, then strode about the room, seeming to inspect every detail. "All is in order," he declared finally, then made for the lectern, to the approving murmurs of the dancers. "Begin!" he declaimed. The dancers turned to one another and slowly began to waltz around the circle. The book promised that their dance, executed correctly, would take each of them from multi-millionaire status into the billionaires club. Fucking rich idiots, thought Peter. Some people believe anything. "With your present," said Calme to the air. "The judge, me of course. The observer," he pointed to Peter. "And the host. Let the ritual begin." With a long mirrored fingernail, he unsealed the forbidden pages at the back of the book and began to read. "Ahmatet loin no." QS-18 giggled again, suddenly noticed the dancers and sat slack-jawed, staring in bemusement. The ritual droned on. The dancers danced on. Peter stood stock still, perfectly silent, as the book instructed. The bejeweled drapes rippled as if in a strong wind. The candle flames guttered. The chandeliers swung crazily as if they were about to detach from the ceiling. Uneasiness swamped Peter's usual performance anxiety. He tried to shake away the feeling. Just as it seemed Calme was flagging and the dancers starting to look limp, a wisp of blue smoke bubbled from the centre of the circle, directly beneath the chair. And then another, and another. Peter's eyes fought to escape his head. QS-18 looked entranced at first, tried to play with one of the wisps, which eluded him. Then he went rigid. Calme's voice grew in intensity as he saw this happen. "Quick brozet, nasho lepit no." An arm the length of a small hatchback emerged from the floor, a twist of blue and red muscle capped with a 3-clawed hand. 2 more demonic arms joined it and waved about. Peter felt panic rise in him like bad chicken. It was real. It was all real. QS-18 jerked, then seemed to grow in size like a bag being filled with icing as the demon inhabited his form. His jaws opened to at least twice their maximum, and an ululating howl broke from them. The gown burst, sending crystalline shrapnel flying in every direction. "Erienteth, magteth, rutamanga," spat Calme, dodging a fake garnet. His eyes were wild inside the mask. Then he paused, looked to Peter. The dancers stopped, looked to Peter. Peter's only line in the ceremony lit up in his head like neon, but his mouth refused to work. "Just do it," said the voice of Random Betty in his head, "no matter how mad it sounds." Somehow he managed to find the words amid his horror. "Speak the name of the demon in exactitude, but bind it to your will, O great judge." Relief washed over him like iced water. The demon turns towards Calme, and each of the 3 scarlet eyes on each of its 3 slick, triple-horned heads opened and closed randomly. 2 of the dancers had lost bladder control, and urine pooled about their stilled feet. Calme was not to be deterred. "This is your name, foul beast of the abyss. Extricadoriad, Lemster, Bon Koala." A cage of golden light began to form around the demon's twisted body. The thing roared, whined, and mewed. "Nix quist lambondia," shrilled Calme. The creature howled. The dancers trembled, but they had to keep still to fulfill their instructions. "Lucious!" shouted Calme triumphantly. Everything stopped. The drapes and candle flames returned to calm. The chandeliers stilled. Peter was stone, his instinct to run entirely overridden by his terror. Around the demon, cage cracked and fragmented like spun sugar. The dancers gasped. Calme gaped. The demon's central head extended on its snake-like neck. "Excuse me," it said, in a tone of honey stuffed with razor blades. Luscious, squeaked Calme. It's luscious, said the demon. But Calme hammered his forefinger into the book. The demon peered at the page and let out a small laugh. Misprint, what can I tell you? People just don't pay attention to the details. It grabbed Calme like a foil-wrapped sweet and squeezed him so he shrieked. Peter closed his eyes, still unable to move, listening to the screams and liquid sounds of dismemberment. Then everything went quiet again. Finally, he opened his eyes to the ballroom abattoir. Luscious turned to him, swinging Calme's head like a conker on its spine string. Its 3 smiles were curious 18s, its button noses cute as his. All the moisture in Peter's body had sweated into his robe. It's pretty, all this, said the demon, flinging Calme about in a grisly arc. Peter nodded. Thanks. Still didn't get my first sexual experience, Triple giggled the demon. Now I've got 3 of everything. Time for your payoff. Peter gulped, wishing he'd taken that job in Superdrug.
Bravo, sir. Very good.
Thank you.
Oh, just as marvellous the second time, I must say.
Definitely.
You're flattered me, sir.
The voices, man. I just can't get over it. I know we have obviously spoken about this before, but your command of these different voices inside this story is excellent. It just absolutely is. So well done for that.
Perfectly seamless. It's a real tell that you've got the voices down pat. That you don't need a lead-in line, or you can just swap between them. That's a great skill.
Thank you.
Only one of the skills on display, however. Some actually excellent writing as well. You've got this sort of luxurious use of language that you don't overuse it, but just in these sort of climactic moments of the story, it really begins to like shine through, or indeed at just important moments of the story. And it really sets both like a place, but also a tone.
What a fantastic compliment! Thank you.
Yeah, well, it's well deserved because the ballroom abattoir got me actually more the second time. I don't know whether you gave a different intonation, but
I think I probably did actually. I think I probably sort of amped it up a little bit actually throughout. There were various tweaks as you read things over and over again. I find you learn the sort of cadences that you need at particular points in it.
Yeah.
I mean, in reference to important language, I mean, I love language and I enjoy hearing it spoken. I love audiobooks. Absolutely love audiobooks. I enjoy seeing it written and I enjoy hearing it spoken. And I love performing my stories. I'm a member of Leicester Writers Club, and we do a manuscript evening every Thursday where we go along and we read out a short story or a section of a novel that we're working on or whatever, and then other people give their critiques and views. And I've been noted for my performance in that on that kind of thing as well. In fact, so much so that I think last time we spoke, I mentioned that there's a blind guy at club who'd asked me to read his his work out, and he's a fantastic writer, a really, really good writer, and he's writing this brilliant novel about set in a kind of really grim little Scottish fishing village, and you can imagine. And I did my first reading for him on last Thursday, and the club chairman came up to me and went, "Well, I think we know who's getting the audiobook contract." Yeah. It was huge fun, but
fantastic.
I loved it because he uses language so beautifully, and it was beautiful to read. So.
There's something else that I noticed on the second listen. It was the way that you build tension is actually it's almost understated, but it works very, very, very effectively. It's so good. So when there's that moment where we're not sure whether or not this this act is going to work, whether these people are going to successfully summon the demon. And the way that you build through that scene works very well, and you get like a little sense that you know exactly how to pull the right strings on the reader at the right time.
Puppet master.
The puppet master, indeed. And then it goes to a bit more of a crescendo moment when he can't really remember his lines, or he sort of chokes on them a little bit, and you get the voices coming in, and so often, if you've read a story before or listened to a story before, you don't really have any moments of bated breath in it because you've heard the surprises. But actually, I found myself that's still working on me the second time, which I think means that you're good at it.
Thank you.
So Ben likes the highfalutin language, but I got to say I love all the gross description in there, and there is so much. All this talk of spots unleashing their load under fingernails and three-dicked demons. It's all very.
Yeah, the triple giggle at the end after he laughs about how many dicks he has. That's just wonderful. The balls crawl. That got me again.
Oh, that's a good one.
Well, yeah, I think I learned a little while back to try to sort of intimate a character's feeling by physical sensation. I mean, it's not a new thing, but I think what is quite challenging sometimes is to portray that in a way that is kind of new or takes points to quite a familiar sensation, but actually in a way or in a context that makes it feel quite new. And I think that's quite a challenge as a writer generally.
Yeah.
It's interesting on the side of all the gross stuff. Colossus of the Thames, my short story collection. There are 2 or 3 stories that have quite a kind of horror Cthulhu type influence in them, and I can, when called to it, I can write quite sort of visceral prose, and I think if you're going to write, for me, good horror, I mean, read horror and watched horror, since I was a kid, really, off and on. And for me, the really good horror stuff is the really sort of visceral kind of, whether it's psychological horror and it's those visceral chills, or whether it's actually something gory or cosmic horror, and then I think it's got to be really, really in order to work.
What is your favourite horror movie? Out of interest.
That's a really interesting question, actually. I think one of my this is going to be a weird sort of answer, really, but one of my favourite horror movies of all time, actually, I think, is Scream. Is the first Scream. I think because I've never been more surprised by a movie that absolutely rips all the horror tropes to death. I think other stuff like I tend to stuff like Cabin in the Woods. I thought was great.
Cabin in the Woods is fantastic.
Really good. Just because it had such a good backstory. I think the horror that I find really boring is the kind of slasher horror, Hostel, and all that sort of nonsense.
Yeah, I mean those are both like very well thought of deconstructions of the genre, aren't they? The Scream and Cabin in the Woods.
Absolutely. I mean, there's quite a lot on it. I mean, Pan's Labyrinth has got some great moments of horror. Funnily enough, I watched Colour Out of Space again last week. Nick Cage, H.P. Lovecraft.
I have also seen this, and I liked it.
Yeah, I'm so looking forward to Del Toro's Mountains of Madness, which I hear is now on again. Because I love the novella. I just think it's absolutely fantastic. And the audiobook's great as well. And I think Del Toro will do it really well. So I'm really excited about that.
So we've had your favourite movie, but have you got? Is it Mountains of Madness for your favourite sort of story, like novel?
Well, on the horror side, I think probably Mountains of Madness. I've been a big Lovecraft fan since I was about 15, really. I used to, and I know he comes up a lot on this podcast, but obviously as a teenager and stuff, I read a lot of Stephen King, and that was quite. I guess Stephen King's somebody who I also see, certainly in the early parts of his books, he tends to you can really see his love of language as well. And I guess I probably find that sort of inspirational as well. Although his books tend to go a bit bonkers as they go along, I find, or they sort of kind of run out of steam a bit, and sometimes he doesn't know how to end it, and they're a bit like, when you're reading some sort of gigantic block of 300,000 words or whatever, it's like, oh God, Stephen, when is this over? Do I really have to hammer through to the end of this?
You almost want to call his dealer for him.
Absolutely, yeah.
He's definitely an ideas man whose come down you can watch happen paragraph per paragraph.
Yes. I think that's probably right. I mean, he does all the novels to me start at the high point and then they just sort of slide gradually towards the end. And I'm not really that kind of. That's not the way I write anyway.
That's fair.
I guess we'll talk about. I guess we'll talk about other sort of science fiction and fantasy stuff. Otherwise, because horror is definitely not my favourite of the genres.
But so we're probably drawing to a close this bit of the Halloween episode, the 100th episode. It's like absolutely fantastic to have a guest like you on during this 100th because
it's a pleasure.
We started this with the intention of being able to tell each other stories, being able to tell other people's stories, and discuss storytelling and writing. And we started off by interviewing our friends and then some people that we met online, and then we started approaching other authors, and now we're on episode 100, and you're exactly the kind of like-minded person that we were hoping to meet when we started this. Like the idea that we can meet up like this and hear your story and chat about it means actually the world to me and to Nico, I'm assuming. Unless he's been lying to me all this time. Have you been lying to me all this time?
Yes.
You sounded very like Luscious then, Nico.
Oh yeah, the Mark Hamill voice came back again. I loved it. The Mark Hamill voice is so good.
I'm available to do Joker again in an animated reboot. Anybody listening, I can do Joker very well.
You would get so much hate if you stole that job from Mark Hamill.
There's no way. I mean, I am absolutely not worthy. But it depends whether they can afford him for the reboot.
Yeah. Speaking of affording things, where can people buy your work?
That's a very good question. It can be purchased in paperback and ebook form on Amazon, and in ebook form also from other good retailers. In fact, for paperback form as well, actually, from other good e-retailers. If you want a hardback copy of the book signed by me, then hop over to my website, which is www.typhon-creative.com. That's typhon-creative.com, and send me an email and
get the book.
I'll get the hardback, which is gorgeous. In fact, actually, I self-published, and when one of my friends got the book, he went, "Wow, this looks like a real book."
Oh no! Oh, come on.
No, I as a musician who you sound like you sound just like a real band. Like, yeah, thanks. Thank you for that. I'm so. Yeah, I know we're meant to be wrapping up, getting ready for the next part, but how British is it? And how often do you get the whole, do you know what? That's actually really good. And it's the actually that stings, isn't it?
Actually, it is, yeah.
Okay. That was a very delicate way of saying I had assumed you're shit.
Yes.
See, I don't actually get the assumed bit. I get it more like their internal yardstick is just not the same as that they would have for a professional. That's the bit that worries me.
I think what it is that you're not famous, so I assumed you'd just be crap.
Yeah, it's definitely an emotional roller coaster when someone does that to you, for sure.
Water off a duck's back.
Absolutely. Hopefully, anyway.
Right, we're going to pop Mark in the cryo tube because we've got to get NaNoWriMo out of the way, but we'll defrost you in a few weeks, Mark. You all right with that?
I'm freezing.
Click, beep, boop, beep, boop.
We really need a soundboard.
Well, I'll put one in.
Oh, there we are. That is the
laughing cryo. Broke character.
Broke character. And then we bring to a close the 100th and the Halloween episode. So thanks for joining us, and see you next time. Thanks for joining us for this episode of The Tiny Bookcase.
Remember to subscribe, otherwise you're going to miss out on the future fun.
Also, tell a friend. If you like this episode, link them to it.
We'd be tremendously grateful. You can follow us on Twitter at BookcaseTiny, Facebook at The Tiny Bookcase, and Instagram at BookcaseTiny for updates. Speaking of supporting the podcast, well, magic can only take one so far. The Tiny Bookcase is supported by the generosity of its patrons. Those kind souls have really kept my belly full the last year. Let's cast a spell for them, shall we? For magnificent beardery, let's cast the Chinicus folliculale spell on Gary Laird. For rich ginger tones on the scalp, let us cast the Orangi Hedondo spell for Scott Byrne. And for general fabulousness, why not the Ooh La La How's Your Mother spell on Matthew McLaren?
How do you come up with that shit, man?